Hey everyone, welcome to the Burnt Brass Homestead channel. It is mid-August and I am preparing for our fall and winter garden. It is a little late. I wish I would have started this a little sooner, but nonetheless, we should be good enough to have crops to get us through until next spring. So what I'm planting in these containers, these are reusable planters that I used last year and that I used earlier this year. These bigger planters I just got this year. I like these for planting tomatoes in as well as planting peppers because there's enough room in a cell for them to grow a big size before transplanting them. I also have the smaller ones, but for right now I just really like using this size. It's more of a preference than anything. Typically people who have more time on their hands, they'll plant using the smaller cells and then they will transplant to the larger ones, but I'm just going to start off in these. And as you will notice, the difference between the smaller cells and the larger cells is that you can plant more seeds per tray when you use the smaller cells. So that's the disadvantage about using the larger cells to start, is that you can't plant as much. I think you can get 144 using these per tray, and you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 36 using the larger trays. The other advantage of using the smaller cells is that you don't use as much soil to fill each cell. So the smaller cells, I would say, is more efficient as far as how many seedlings you can plant at one time and the amount of soil that you use. With fall fast approaching, I have already started my fall garden. I have started planting broccoli, kale, collard, Swiss chard, cabbage, lettuce, spinach, sugar snaps, and more carrots. I have also planted bush beans for inside the greenhouse. I want to see if I can get a nice harvest before the temperatures get too cold. The greenhouse should extend the time needed for the bush beans to produce by a few weeks. We will see. I also planted some more mustard greens. We enjoyed eating the mustard greens over the summer, but I need to plant a fresh batch to get us through the fall. However, the mustard greens will not survive the winter here in the Northeast Zone 6B, even with the greenhouse. The parsnips I planted a few weeks ago, actually several weeks ago, have not seemed to germinate. So I'm going to plant some more in the same bed. If they do not germinate this time around, I will have other vegetables ready to transplant in its place. My goal this fall is to have something growing in every bed in the greenhouse, although not everything will survive all the way through winter. I also plan on planting a row of beets. Now, my husband does not really like them, but I don't mind them, nor do other members of my family, so I am going to plant a small amount. Most of the vegetables that I am planting this fall were started in seed trays. This allows the garden to produce more effectively and efficiently. Right now, we are still harvesting tomatoes and other vegetables from the garden, so I do not want to pull them out prematurely when I can start new crops in the seed trays and transplant them immediately after the current crops are pulled from the gardens. By starting cool weather crops such as broccoli, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, and spinach indoors in late winter, then transplanting these crops in early spring once the threat of frost has passed. I found that I like to have a second round of transplants of these same crops ready to replace those that we eat, such as cabbage, or to replace plants that have produced abundantly to start but produce less as they mature, such as bush beans, or to replace plants that are eaten by insects or small animals. Always having transplants ready to replace crops in your garden is called succession planting. The timing of when you start new seedlings to be transplanted depends on the vegetable and how long it takes for them to grow, as well as the time of year or the season. Succession planting is something that I am focusing more on to get the most of the space that we have to grow food. Plants that have a long growing season don't always benefit from succession planting, such as Brussels sprouts and tomatoes. But I would still have a few extras in the event there's an issue, such as critters or disease. Starting seedlings late in winter is a good way to have a very productive early spring garden. And by planting additional seedlings of the same crops, you can keep the garden going as the old crops mature or slowly stop producing. Likewise, in mid-March through April, starting warm weather crops like tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, jalapenos, watermelon, squash, beans, and okra is a great way to get your early summer crops. They will need to be started indoors and then transplanted outside to your garden by May or earlier, depending on what zone you live in. So to summarize, start your spring crops in seed trays in late winter. Start your summer crops in early spring to be transplanted as soon as there is no threat of a frost. Start your fall crops in mid to late summer, depending on the crop. And start your winter vegetables in late fall, such as garlic and other crops that can overwinter. And that's how you have a garden that can produce all year long. And for those of you without a greenhouse, consider low tunnel hoop houses to extend your garden season. Thanks for watching.